This is iFanboy Pick of the Week, number 887, brought to you by iFanboy listeners just like you. Hey, I'm Josh Flanagan. Conor is not here this week. Apparently, he is taken to privateering the trade routes of the Mediterranean. That's what he does. So, that's the God's honest 100% truth. Sure. My pal, comicbook.com's own Jim Viscardi is with us today.
Hello, everybody.
Hey!
I would like to know more about Conor's pirating adventures.
It came from out of nowhere. He ended up in some shady Reddit threads. Before you know it,
that sounds about right.
Bought himself a monkey that he kept on his, and he just started swearing, but like the old timey swearing.
The pandemic was hard for everybody.
Crazy. Yeah, it's amazing the way that kind of stress comes out. This is Pick of the Week number 887. Numbers that scare me every time. Every week,
so many.
I know. It's like I don't know how to stop. Like, what would you? I was like, I don't even think about not doing it because you do it. It's just like you have to do the dishes. You have to do this. This is more fun than the dishes. But well, not this part is, but the rest of it sucks. Every week when somebody picks a Pick of the Week, that's the book they like the best from their stack of comics. We call that the Pick of the Week. We will talk about that comic book. We will talk about other comic books. There is a Patron Pick. We will answer some listener mail if we have time. There will be spoilers if you have not read the books. And this week I have the pick. So I just went straight through that. Do you want to add anything to that portion? Because it's going to be me talking a long time.
Yeah. No. That makes a ton of sense. Yeah. Pretty
so,
straightforward.
It's pretty well practiced. The Hunger in the Dusk number 1 is my pick of the week. Story is by G. Willow-Wilson. Art by, and I will have not fixed the typo on Jim's script. We'll say, should say Chris Wildgoose, which is a great name all on its own, but his says Christ Wildgoose, which really is a guy you would remember from college. And then coming up hot on Chris's heels is color by Sassyk.
Yep.
Msassyk. As a comic book professional, are you familiar with that name?
No.
Okay. Letters by Simon Boland, a name I am familiar with. This one's out from IDW. I had no idea it was coming. I had no thoughts about it. I listen to, I read. I can't talk. It's been a long day and it's hot, so deal with that. A sort of a well-known creator comes out with a creator-owned book from, in this case, IDW, and I think, well, I should probably check that out. And what we have here is a pretty basic fantasy story. There are humans, there are orcs, the land is dying, there is a threat, the humans and the orcs have some history together, and the thing here is that they must learn to work together. And all of those tropes to you might sound quite familiar because they are quite well worn. However, and there are a lot of fantasy books out there and people building their own worlds and coming up with stuff, and they are of various levels of skill and craft. But I think this is a genre I actually like quite a bit, but I don't see it done well all that often. And did you read this?
I did read it, and I really liked it. And it was one of those things where I traditionally don't actually hate fantasy, and this was really good.
I'm glad to hear that because it was a lot simpler than a lot of these are, and I think that a lot of that comes down to the fact that G. Willow-Wilson is at this point definitely a veteran of the form, and so when she came to it, she knew enough not to way overdo it, which is what a lot of younger or less experienced creators do, is they get really into the idea of building this world, and then you get into it and there's like, they've created a whole slang, they've created different species and races and all this stuff, and it's too much and you do not care. This one, it gets you in with things that you absolutely recognize, like they're like, orcs are coming. I was like, all right, and they look like orcs. Is not like there's no reinventing of the wheel. It's just applying storytelling to something that we understand, which gets you into it a lot faster. And I'm not going to say it's minimalistic, but it's just done with craft. And so what we have is Basically, there's a human. The orcs fought him once and he killed a bunch of people, so they respect him. So when they come together, the head of the orcs recommends that he says, "I demand that I get to work with this guy." And the thing that he's doing is he's loaning, I guess, the services of their best healer, a fetching, as far as orcs go, young woman. And obviously, there's some sparks that go between the man and the woman. The human man and the lady orc. That are gonna, and it's a fish out of water, will they, won't they, whatever it is. Like, it's all those things, but it's done really well. It's done by someone who knows how to make comic books and tell a story, and that makes a ton of difference. Chris Wildgoose, again, I love saying it. It's, that name is wonderful. I feel like I know the name, but I don't know from where. But Dar was great. Dar was exactly what it needed to be. Again, not a reinvention of what these things look like. It's if you saw that this was concept art for World of Warcraft, you would be like, yeah, that makes sense. That works. But the storytelling is strong. The character design, I know who I'm looking at all times, which is really good, especially with the orcs, and all the humans. Again, that's the thing that's hard for people to do. There's a lot of books that come out from Image, and they've got big eyes, and I don't mean the people, I mean the creators, like, we can do all this stuff, and they overreach, and it makes it confusing. Whereas it didn't happen in this once, which is really impressive to me in this, like, sort of subgenre of comics. And as I was reading it, I just kept thinking, actually, I was becoming cognizant of the fact that I was really enjoying it, because I went into it, like I do most comic books that I don't know anything about, with, like, skepticism. I was like, all right, this is bad, let's get it over with. But I love it. Like, when you...
Well, I think one of the things that... Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. One of the things that surprised me about this, though, was there's violence in this book.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say it's, like, subtle, but, like... No. It is incredibly well used and well placed violence.
You know what I would say? It was in this book. I think it occurs twice. It's very fast.
Yes,
everything is calm and quiet. There's not even a sense of danger, and then extreme violence.
And then an orc gets its head cut off,
and then it's over. And that happens a couple of times. And I don't. It's an interesting thing to see in a comic book.
Yeah,
I'm sure it happens, but I don't know that I've noticed it in this way. And like because it'll be calm and everybody be fine, and all of a sudden, danger, slap, 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 it's over.
Mm-hmm.
3 pages or whatever, and like the action scenes, there's not a lot of like establishing shots. It's all close into what is happening, as if you were standing there, and then it's sort of over. And I think that's probably, I was going to say realistic, but I feel like whenever you think about like battles, like war, I think it's always much shorter than you imagine.
And but it also, like, it kind of keeps you on the edge of your seat a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It makes it makes turning the pages a lot more fun. I do also need to call out Miss Sasek.
It's good
colorings.
Yeah.
Because it is great. To me, it is some great coloring, because I think like the art is great, but I think a lot of work is done here in setting each of the scenes with color.
What's interesting is, by saying that, in the way that we were talking about action, if you look at if you just like flip through the pages really quickly, it's like yellow and brown and pastoral, and then it starts to get a little darker, and then when the stuff happens, it's red.
Mm-hmm.
And then when it's over, we pull out, it's darker. It goes back to sort of what it was, but it's a little darker. And then there's like a fire, and then we skip some time, and we're in a green field, and again it starts getting more and more gray until the violence happens, and then it's red again.
Yep.
Really interesting. It's like it's a real narrative approach to color.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's a difficult name. I feel bad because the person, has a name. That's what, I don't know why I'm thinking it's a woman. I think it's because it starts with MS, like Ms. But I don't know. I don't know anything about it. I don't, and it's a good job in that way. I was surprised. And then sort of I was looking at my books, like, what is going to be my pick? And I was like, I think I enjoyed and was pleasantly surprised by this more than anything. because you just take such well-worn tropes and you just do it really well. It's fun.
And like this is the other thing, like it didn't feel like a chore reading this.
No.
Where some of the other books I read, while I enjoyed them, felt a little bit like a chore.
You check the page count. Where am I in this?
Right.
You know what? One other bit, and then we'll move on. Is that a lot of books take a fantasy setting or something like that, and they either go full on serious, creating a dialogue. There's a lot of stuff going on, forsooth, by my honor, whatever, blah blah blah, and then the other swing is everybody's super jokey and funny,
right?
Such as the last Dungeons and Dragons movie, which I really enjoyed, but it's hard to get away with that. And in this, I thought it wasn't super serious, but it was serious enough, and it wasn't really funny, but it had its moments of lightheartedness, I thought, and it didn't overreach in either of those ways. It struck a really nice balance. It wasn't trying to impress me. It wasn't trying to get by on jokey demeanors or like roguishness or whatever. Again, it's a difficult tightrope to walk, I think, to get that right.
Great pick.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm really glad that you liked it too, because sometimes when you're like, I don't know, you just pick a book like this. There's not a lot of people who get to do this. It's like 5 total. It's a hard thing to relate to, but you just don't know. I know when Conor's on here and I pick a random thing, part of the excitement is always just seeing what he'll say. Like after I talk for a little while, he'll go, "I really liked it," or like, "I hated this." It's good. So I'm glad. Sometimes I like to make sure we talk about the big Marvel books when you're on,
sure,
because of your affection and long experience with them. Amazing Spider-Man number 923. We talk about this book a lot, and I think I am just in love with the melodrama of what is going on here. I've commented in the past that I think it's really interesting that whatever Nick Spencer did to take away Norman's sins and guilt or whatever, it should be really dumb. And we should be spending all of our time thinking, come on, he's just going to turn back. But they have really lulled me into a sense where I believe, just like Peter Parker does, that
he has changed. He has changed
and he is a different person. And we know this isn't going to hold, but which creates a sense of tension, like when it's going to, but it works even more. The tension's even higher because you want to believe, you do believe. And actually I think that they spent time convincing us. Yeah. Because at first, like they're letting us get our guard down. And then this sort of existential threat of Dr. Octopus being so Dr. Octopus, just prime Doctor. It's very suspenseful. And it's very fun, and I'm really enjoying it. It's not even like it's like this is technically amazing, but it feels good.
Yep,
I think.
Yeah, and I think if anything too, it's interesting in that I feel Marvel has really given Zeb really good artists for Spider-Man.
Yes, absolutely, and man, I think that Ed McGuinness, who is being inked by Mark Farmer here, and I do not think that is inconsequential, is doing wonderful work.
Yeah. And it's one of those things where when the two are really in sync, like this is kind of what I love about comics. Right.
Yeah.
It's even just encapsulated in this issue, you get a bunch of really cool, fun Spider-Man action. You get some fun jokes, and you get a bunch of drama. Right.
And the action scenes are just, crazy panel layouts and dynamic, canted angles on pages. Like when every time they show Octavius, he's at a 10. Like every page, and it's great. You can do that in a comic book. You can't do that in a TV show. It'd be exhausting.
Right.
So he's always arch. And then of course you get Norman sort of as that contrast to him, who's like, I'm shamed. I feel bad. When's it going to go? And I also think it's interesting that like Ed McGuinness, who in my head has a very specific thing, and it's like big shoulders and muscles and over, like Spider-Man in here just looks like a 5'6" normal guy who's in pretty good shape.
Mm-hmm.
And then everybody around him is sort of, overly cartoony or whatever.
Right.
But Spider-Man himself is actually fairly like plain. It's interesting, which doesn't seem like him. Like if you told me this Spider-Man was Ed McGuinness, no, it isn't. There's no way.
Look, and they're gonna give us a new Spider-Man toy in this issue. I'm sure. 3-4 years down the line.
Oh sure.
With him and the octopus arms on there and all red and all that. I was like, I love when that happens.
Just enough body horror,
right?
Of the things like tapping into his spine.
Yeah,
it doesn't really feel like anything. Oh my god, it hurts! And I was like, oh, it's the scariest thing.
Yeah, and then there's a bit of a joke in here where Zeb lets Ed draw rec rap. We're like,
Rich Parker, right? I was like, something about that name. Right, there it is. Look at the toes.
Yep. I was just like that's Ed McGuinness to me he will always be the Hulk guy, right? He draws Hulks better than anyone else. Big, bulky, muscly superheroes. And so
I think of him as a Superman guy. And I know that's not what he was originally known for, but that's
I can see that.
I really liked that too.
Yeah. And so I love that like there's just literally like a page where it's like, oh, Ed wanted to draw him, and so we basically wrote a scene in for that, and it worked. And then we get the ending, which is just like, oh, we're just talking about with all the normal stuff. We're just like, oh no,
yeah, it's terrifying.
Oh no,
oh god, you're right. I forgot about. I was looking at the arms on Spider-Man as being the last page, and then I was like, oh yeah, that was the end. Oh yeah, that hurt. Yeah, that's like watching like a show or a movie about an alcoholic or whatever, and the whole time they're like, "We're off the stuff," and then like they have the lapse or somebody forces them. Ugh, it's terrible.
Yeah,
that's crushing. I like that Peter specifically took out an airbrush and painted the like, and which would have taken forever.
Yep.
Would I wait for it to dry? Like the time that passed between him starting to paint in the second to last panel on the one page, and then the full page on the next page, that's gonna be like 2 days. I mean,
and I think that the other thing too is I love what they've done with Peter and Jonah's relationship.
Yeah,
like that's just been fun.
I was trying to think if that is, because comics are the illusion of change and development, but nothing really is. But this kind of has, and it's been fairly consistent for a while. They actually did evolve J. Jonah Jameson, because I think it's possible they just ran out of jokes in the context or just anything. There was just like, there's literally nothing we can do with this one note character, so we have to move him along, and then he's man out of his place in a different, all sorts of things like that. It's fun. It's been delightful. I think it's a good time for Spider-Man.
It's been a good run.
So speaking of things that are great about comic books, are you reading any of the Star Wars books or Darth Vader?
No, because they're all way too intimidating for me.
Really?
Yeah. I'm a Star Wars fan, but I'm not like a huge Star Wars fan. Sure. And so like none of that stuff is really just
that definition. I don't even know what that means anymore. Like you can be any flavor of Star Wars fan. There's like, it's like saying I like rock music. Like,
I mean, sure. But like, I just saw the Ahsoka trailer earlier this week and I'm just like, that looks like too much homework. And so I'm like I want to be excited by it, but it looks like there's a lot of things that I don't know.
Couldn't care less. Yeah. Like, and I don't even mean it dismissively. I guess that's literally dismissiveness.
Sure.
But I just like, it doesn't interest me. And Rosario Dawson does interest me, but not that much.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But so I because it was on the list, I read it.
Oh wow.
And I loved it. So I don't know, and so I'll let you tell me like it. I don't like, was this kind of like a one shot or is this something that has been building?
It's part of a greater story, but it's interesting because you were saying that you weren't it was too much. And this
Right.
is a narrative, but it's one of those things that is written in such a way that it really doesn't matter. It's Darth Vader.
I mean, that's how I felt. Like
Yeah.
so go ahead.
So Darth Vader, number 36, written by Greg Pak with Raphael Ienco. All artists are Italian now, by the way. That's just how it is. Federico Blee on colors and Joe Caramagna, he's an American. But still, on letters.
Still in Italian.
Yeah, sure. And I'm Irish. Whatever. I have never seen dismissiveness to the part in when I was in Ireland. I said my name was Flanagan, and no one gave a shit because there are 4 million Irish people and 60 million American Irish people, and we don't rate. I might be projecting. Anyway, I only read 2 Star Wars series. I read the main Star Wars title, which has been pretty consistently fun. If not great, but it's been worth my time. I can say that much. Sure. And then Darth Vader, which is all the way through. This is actually the second series of Darth Vader. There was an earlier one, but they didn't put legacy numbering. But I've been reading these all the way through. I never got off. And it's basically it's Darth Vader wandering around, fighting and winning. That's all it is. So this issue is basically throughout the course of this series, without us even realizing it, Darth Vader has killed a lot of droids. And, they all, some of these are familiar. Like the big reveal here is BT-1 and 000. They're the black murder droids that are, an R2 unit and a protocol droid. And they were in Karen Gillan's original run, and, they're fun, whatever. And then there's this big ball, I forget what he's called. This big round droid thing. He's ridiculous. Anyway, they all show up again, and it's like, listen, we have our chance to get revenge on Vader. He keeps killing us, and we don't like it. There's a battle droid with a giant arm, and the first 4 pages are the droids all talking to each other and putting their plan together, and it's ridiculous. It's so They keep saying, well, we'll get to the plan, but we'll get this far. Well, what's the plan? We're still working on that. And it's so silly. If I was a 15-year-old again, and I was in that when I when you were a baby, and I was like, oh, Star Wars should be serious, which I do not agree with anymore. I would have been so annoyed by this. But now I have a good friend, and he, I talk about him a lot because I don't have a lot of comic book friends outside of Conor. And he will send me pages or panels and just go, I love comics. And they'll be ridiculous shit. And I was reading this and I thought of him because I was like, this is ridiculous. And it's really fun because of that, I think. It's not a spoiler, but the droids lose. That's the thing about the Darth Vader book. He always, there's never any, it's just watching the hubris of the people who try to take him on. That's what the book is. Is one of the droids, so their secret weapon is that one of the droids had been destroyed by Vader, but Vader used some of his parts to rebuild himself. And so he thought, if I can get close enough, I can speak to my parts and we can control him. Didn't work. Darth Vader has the Force. It's big, goofy action. The art is perfect for what it is. I don't think it's hard to draw. Even I was trying to think. Salvador Rocca was on Darth Vader for a while, and I was like, he can draw. This is perfect for him. There was no faces. It was fine. And this is I actually really like this art. Raphael Ienco, sort of perfect for it. I really like his sort of sketchy Darth Vader. Does droids well?
It kind of felt Simonson in a way in some.
Totally. If you look at page 11 on the digital comic, there's a drawing that looks sort of like Simonson, almost Frank Millery. The way that it's ink. I guess Klaus Janson is more appropriate. But it's so dumb and silly, and it's not like, I think Conor, my erstwhile partner, doesn't really want to spend too much time in these other worlds, but this doesn't feel like it matters.
Right.
Which is fine.
Yeah.
I don't want it to matter. You know what I mean? But it's good enough that it gets by. I don't ever need Star Wars gaps filled in. This all takes place, I think, between Empire and Jedi. And That's fine. I don't like. It's not really explaining everything. It's just look at this weird stuff that happened.
Right.
It was super fun though.
It's like I said, I just decided to jump into it. I wanted to read it. The issue was fun. I knew nothing about it, but and everything was told to me right there. I mean, that's one of the things that I love so much about Greg is like
Greg Pak is a pro.
He's so good at that.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, it was great, and it looked great, and it was a fun read, and it's just like, again, right, it's just like Spider-Man just was like one of those things you just kind of love about comics. Like it could just be, give you a little bit of everything and just be fun.
You could never read another issue of this, and you might not, and you know, but this is what comics was to me when I first started reading comics. Is you pick something up, you read it, you have fun in that issue, you can keep going or not, you can read what came before it or not. It's great. You are always on this show on a week when Moon Knight comes out.
Man, I can't tell you. When I was like, oh, what books came out this week? It's like, oh, thank God a Moon Knight book came out.
It's crazy. The synchronicity of this
is really something. But this week we got Moon Knight 25. Obviously story by Jed McKay. 3 artists because it's an oversized quote anniversary issue.
Yeah, I went in to look at something. I was like, it's how many pages?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's also like a reprint all the way in the back, but art by Partha Pratim, Alessandro Capuccio, and Alessandro Vitti. Colors by Rochelle Rosenberg, and letters by Corey Pettit. Look, I've been on the show enough to tell everyone how much I like this book. And I love what Jed is doing to reinvent, not necessarily reinvent Moon Knight, but really more, what he's doing more is reinventing a rogues gallery for Moon Knight, who really only had like 2, maybe 3 true adversaries. Bushman.
Who were his? Okay. Yeah,
Bushman,
I remember that.
Bushman was one. Black Spectre, who is in this, is really the only other one. And it's interesting that it really took us a little bit to get to Black Spectre. And we really haven't seen Bushman at all either. Like in some of the other stuff that we've gotten have been some new villains. He reinvented Zodiac a little bit here. In this run, and so it's been a really, really good, in addition to like adding more to the Moon Knight mythos and just having a lot of fun with it. This book, go ahead.
You can, I feel like Moon Knight is a character who, I mean, obviously, like he invites reinvention.
Yes. Oh, 100%.
To a certain extent.
And honestly, at the end of the day, what I really like about a Moon Knight book is you're guaranteed Moon Knight's really going to punch a lot of people in the face. And sometimes that's just what I want from my comics. I just want the hero beating up bad guys.
I will say the one thing that you should always be able to count on is panels of Moon Knight looking cool as shit.
Yes.
And I will say it usually is a really fun place to watch artists, draw the cape. Right. And the contrast of that white costume against everything else, and how you want to do the hood or how you want to do the cape, that's kind of just it's like watching like a I was going to say jam music, but like musical improvisation, because it exists over a thing that you recognize, but as a costume, as a design and an image, it's so fluid that it's always fun. I always think that the first time that I ever saw Greg Smallwood was on Moon Knight, and I was not interested in the story one bit. I just read it for that, to look at it.
It's one of those things where, look, Alessandro Capuccio, who has been the main artist on the series, is always turning out phenomenal work and will go down as a seminal Moon Knight artist, right? The thing that makes me a little upset is for the first couple of issues, and then the main cover for this is done by Steve McNiven, and I just can we just get Steve McNiven to draw maybe just one issue of Moon Knight?
Right? I don't think you can.
I would really marvel if you're listening. Please just give me one. I just need one.
Done an interior in like in a
He
long
did.
time.
I feel like he did something recently.
But like not a lot, like a run.
No.
It was like 8 pages and something.
Right. Yeah. But
I will
whatever.
say, like, I flipped through this because I was trying to find the credits, and I thought the first just chunk of pages.
Oh yeah, by Partha Pratim were phenomenal.
Oh my goodness, that sort of first page of whoever that is. I assume that's Mark Spector walking down the street. I don't know who it is. But like, it's a beautiful shot, and the buildings that he's walking between are kind of wedged out sideways, and the yellow light's coming from behind, and all the proportions are stretched and idiosyncratic.
Yeah, and then even just like the intro shot of Black Spectre sitting on his throne or chair or whatever, it was just really, really cool. And then you get to the Alessandro stuff, and you're like, oh wow, this is awesome.
Yeah.
So the long and the short of this issue is basically there's kind of 3 stories kind of being told here, where Black Spectre obviously wants to, kill Moon Knight. Surprise, surprise. But he's acting more like a bit more of a mafia don than anything else, but like a really like creepy, freaking menacing looking one, right? Where it's like, I'll do you a favor, and then you need to do something for me, kind of thing. And then then the Moon Knight stuff kind of comes into play. Moon Knight as Stephen Grant goes to visit Zodiac in jail, asking him like, "Are you trying to be Black Spectre, you idiot?" And Zodiac is like, "No, absolutely not," kind of thing. But it's a really cool. It's a great Stephen Grant kind of scene, because Stephen is so calm, cool, and collected, and talks. Will sometimes relay thoughts that Mark will share, in his head, basically, and it's a ton of great interplay there. And then there's a whole scene with 8-Ball, which again is just like just one of those, like, how is this a Marvel villain that keeps showing up in random places all the time?
Head?
With the 8-Ball head. Yeah. And so there's a whole scene where like they're talking about like why 8-Ball is kind of a joke, and he's just like, well, I lost my job, and he goes, hold on a second. So I'm pulling up the scene. So basically, there's a whole spot where he's like, "What happened to like what?" He's like, "We don't talk anymore. Like, are you looking for a job?" And he goes, "You don't know how to." He goes, "Do you know how to pilot a helicopter?" And he goes, "I'm a jet propulsion engineer. I designed and built a hovercraft in the shape of a ball rack. For God's sakes, I flew it around even." And it's like, oh, right. Of course. Like, that's the kind of absurdity. And then basically, like, you just find out like he lost his job, and there's not enough jobs for, serial loser supervillains, is what he says. Which is again, it's just great. But like the thing I love about the series and the art, whatever, is like, God, is just so pretty to look at. And so I traditionally hate old, like, wartimey kind of flashbacks. But I love Alessandro Vitti, and I've loved him ever since I first saw him on Secret Warriors, like way back when. And there is a weird, not weird, there's a bit more of a Losers vibe from the Losers. God, who the hell wrote that?
Andy Diggle and Jock.
Andy Diggle, right? Yeah, Andy Diggle and Jock. Right. That's it. Yep. And so so like the interlude has definitely has like a Losers feel to it, which is really cool, which kind of, tells a little backstory on why, the history that Moon Knight and Black Spectre have, and, Jigsaw shows. So basically a bunch of villains kind of come out of the woodwork to try and like kill Moon Knight, and Moon Knight, does his thing, and, puts them all to shame. But again, it's just like, the thing I love about this book is, one, again, the story is awesome, but like the art is really what really keeps me coming back. And This was just another great one.
Before we wrap up this part of it, I will say that I'm going to give a warning now to comic book readers of an unsettling trend that I am noticing, and that is the drone fight.
Yes.
I think there was another book this week that also had a drone fight, and I can't remember what it was, but I'm looking here and there's a drone fight, and it's okay for now. But you're gonna want to watch that. If you're a comic creator out there listening and you think, I'll put a drone fight in, you are edging towards a cliche which doesn't quite exist. But
please don't.
Yeah, that like drone fights and AI fights, I'm already over them. It doesn't need to be. Just watch out. Just watch. It's the new. I got this.
Yeah.
I don't know that that's true.
I mean, whatever. And then at the very end, there's a reprint of like a classic Bill Sienkiewicz Black Spectre story, which is just I love classic Bill.
Oh wow, look at that.
Yeah.
Oh, it looks like yeah, what was I forget what it was, but Marvel did like an adult line, Epic.
Oh.
Yeah.
No, it was the before Max, but yeah.
Yeah. Oh, like 80s.
Yeah. The
and it looks like that.
Yep.
And it's awesome. I'm not sure about this run of Miles Morales Spider-Man. I see now that this is it says 8, but it's issue 290. I've read all of them. All of them.
That's a lot.
Why can't I get the credits right on any of this script? I know exactly why. I was doing 1,000 things today. The writer on this is Cody Ziegler, who is a TV writer, worked on the She-Hulk show, I believe. And following up along Saladin Ahmed storyline, which I liked. I didn't love, but I stuck with it. And I think that the thing that's coming in here is that the vernacular of the characters changes every time a new writer takes over. Because there's something to making them sound like authentic kids, which I respect, but also I believe that the reality is most of the people reading this are 45-year-old men. I mean, if we're going to be honest, like you're not getting the kids in. There's a drone fight in this. This is the one with the drone fight. And I'm trying not to get over it, but I feel like we kind of reinvent the character constantly. Miles has this girlfriend who's the young Vulture. I think she's good now. I don't know. I feel like I'm not getting a consistent read on who this character is, and not in the sense like he's growing up and getting older, because he should be, but he also isn't because he's the same age as far as I can tell. The art was fun. Hobgoblin is the villain for this. Nothing really stood out about it, and I feel like 8 issues into this one, I feel like I'm kind of stuck. If do you read these? Have you followed?
I am not reading this one.
Okay. In the Saladin Ahmed storyline, basically, this is going to be crazy. You've never heard of this in a comic book, but they broke Spider-Man down all the way, and you can see how far he can come back from. But it was like he was kidnapped and tortured and experimented on and all this stuff, and they threatened his family and blah blah blah, and he came out of it. And I don't know. I feel like there's still a shadow of that over it. I feel like it's kind of unresolved, and I mean, basically, they spent half the issue with his girlfriend telling him, he's like, "You should talk to a therapist. This is hard." And I don't know if it's pulling together for me, but I'm loath to give it up because I've been reading it for so long, and I want to like it. I ordered these poorly. Let's go ahead, and we're gonna switch here to Night Terrors -- 1. We're gonna move that up in the thing, so it isn't just me talking.
No, that's fine.
I tried to read it.
This is one of those things where, and I'm gonna have every retailer who listens to this be super mad at me about this, but
I have no idea if retailers listen to this.
Well, whatever. Anyway, this is a book. So DC's got their, like, this is, I guess, the first kind of event thing that they're doing with Dawn of DC, and I had been liking I've been liking some of the Dawn of DC books, and then when they do something like this, I just get really mad.
Why?
In the sense, because I just like...
No, not you. Why are they doing it?
Yeah,
They're
I don't know.
Doing something already, and they weren't done.
Right. I mean, that's it. And so I was like, well, whatever. Let me give this thing. And so, like, honestly, none of this seemed incredibly appealing to me until I started flipping through it. And the thing I did first was like flip through it and be like, oh, some of this art's really nice in here.
Yes.
And then I went back and I read it.
Mm-hmm.
I could not really tell you what's going on.
You
but
should
it was
be able to, as it is Night Terror's #1.
Sure.
This should be explained to you. And I thought, oh, you've already explained a lot of stuff somewhere.
Yeah. There's zombie stuff going on and nightmares and everyone's evil looking and whatever.
You know what was great? The first 3 pages with Dead Man.
Oh yeah,
gorgeous.
Yep.
I
almost to the point where like I would love this team to give me a Dead Man book in this style.
I was like, all right, I saw you put it on the list. I'm skipping over the whole damn thing. I think it's 2 months of partial vacation from DC. But I looked at the first couple of pages, and Joshua Williamson, he's no slack. You know,
I love Josh.
Yeah. And the first thing I was like, this is fantastic. If this is what it is, I'm going to give it nope. Nope. Creepy eyed Joker thing that isn't Joker and Batman. I lost it. And then so I started flipping through it quickly, and I got to the page where they showed the quote Nightmare Stone, and I was like, fuck, I stopped reading instantly. There's a talisman that's screwing everybody up. Whatever.
But it looked cool because then you got some more Dead Man pages.
I didn't get that far.
Oh yeah.
I bolted after that. I thought the art looked good, except whatever the villains are that are going here, their designs, it doesn't do anything for me. It's called Night Terrors, so they're gonna do some horror thing, and I'm not into that, which isn't.
But I feel like it's a thing that DC does a lot. Well, and isn't that normally Tom Taylor's shtick? And again.
Well, I mean, the thing is those were surprises in a certain way. Deceased, it breaks the rule of if you don't like a thing, but it's well done, then you can like the thing.
Right.
This is the pick of the week. You don't like fantasy.
Right.
It's done really well. So all of a sudden it doesn't matter so much. Deceased is that. DC versus Vampires was super fun all the way through, and it should have been terrible. So there was a brief, because I knew this was line wide, I thought that's probably not going to be great. But I gave it 5 pages.
Give me a Joshua Williamson Dead Man book, please.
Yeah. That's
DC,
all right.
Let's just make it happen.
I mean, Joshua Williamson, if you followed his career and you've read his creator-owned stuff, that dude is all over the place in terms of genre, and he's always done horror to a certain extent. He did a Young Dracula series or book at Oni when he was much younger. He's doing Dark Ride right now over at Image, which is sort of a horror series. It's a much better book than this. But Giuseppe Camuncoli on art, it always deserves a look. And he's in here, so that's pretty nice. And those are the comics that we wanted to talk about this week. Surprise, surprise, we went very long on those things. But we're about to make up some time, folks, because every week the patrons vote on a book that they would like us to read. And this week, surprise, surprise, it was The Hunger in the Dust #1 by G. Willow Wilson, Chris Wildgoose, Mzasek, and Simon Boland. You may have heard about this about 40 minutes ago. And we've already talked about the book.
And it's great.
Yeah, would have read it anyway, but as it is the patron pick, we talked about it. We must give it ratings.
Okay.
Ratings. Would you like to go first?
What's the ratings out of?
It's 1 to 5.
Okay.
You may slice that up and divide it any way that you would like.
Okay. I would give it a 4, and I'm still gonna read. I want to read it still.
4.2.
Oh.
4.2. I am absolutely going to read it. Really great. Didn't blow me away, but very enjoyable and a surprise at that. So that's the patron pick. Thanks to the patrons for voting, for supporting the site. I'm going to rip through this stuff really quick. You can go to patreon.com/iFanboy. You directly support the show. You unlock shows if you've enjoyed the talk explodes, the book explodes, the media explodes, the hangouts. There's a great community on Discord and on Facebook. There's a new system, thanks largely to Patreon changing how they do things, levels of support, tiers, things like that. I don't care what you sign up for. It's really helpful. It makes an actual genuine difference in our lives. It makes this worth doing in more than just like the way of it being fun, which means you're probably keeping it alive because I got other shit to do. But thank you to everybody who contributes and is part of it. It touches me to my heart. You can go to ifanboy.threadless.com. There are shirts. There's our iFanboy Pride shirt. Half of all those proceeds go to the It Gets Better project. There are 13 designs that you can put on t-shirts, sweatshirts, tank tops, and many, many other things. There's a PayPal link at ifanboy.com/support. There is links on the site for ifanboy.com/Amazon to purchase things through there. It's an affiliate account. You know how that works because you've been around and there's an internet. And then there's bookshop.org, which is a way to buy books on the internet, but help out local bookstores as you do it. You'll find those links on the website where we can. And of course, the patrons have this one other thing. Patrons that give at $5 or higher level on patreon.com/ifanboy, they get their own superpower. And so I turn the mic over to you to bestow.
David Dunbar, his superpower is that he will never, ever have to find an ink pad for his stamps.
It's a niche problem.
He grabs a stamp, not a postage stamp, just like a stamp that you make rubber stamp. All he has to do, you just got to pick it up. It is inked. It's good to go. It's not even like over inked or under inked. It's perfectly inked every time.
Now, what happens when he's stamped whatever he needed to stamp and he needs to put it back down?
Oh, then it just loses all of the ink.
So there's no staining.
No stain.
You could keep that rubber stamp just in your pocket. You could wear white pants around. It wouldn't matter.
That's right. Would not matter. And like, look, David, if you're smart, you open up a small business, okay? And around the holidays, you just crush it, man. You just crush it.
Is the stamp? Can it be any stamp?
Any stamp.
He does not like.
He just has to pick it up.
What is your business plan? I'm not sure that it was very clear.
Greeting cards, gift tags, Etsy. The business plan is Etsy.
You believe there's a market for stamped things?
Look, all he's got to do, he's got to go. Look, I live in the South now, okay? And there's a ton of like kitsch everywhere, right?
Okay.
Like little vintage antique stores and, whatever, right?
I air quoted vintage in my head.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah. And so all he has to do is just set up shop during the holidays, right? Make the whatever store he's going to go visit, they pay him. And then he also takes a little cut and he will just like, look, you need like thank you cards, right? Mm-hmm. He probably has the nicest thank you stamps. Where all he has to do is he gets them and he's just like boom, 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 tap, 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 tap. And you've got a stack of 50 ready to go.
Now, when I come up with the power, which is usually not very good, usually it's related to whatever I was doing. So I'm curious, how have stamps been involved in your life recently that made you think of this?
My wife just got me one.
Really?
That is I'm holding it up to the camera like there is one. It's
it's called a video show.
No, it's not. It's called the Jim Seal of Approval, and I have brought it to work with me.
Do you use paper in your
Well, no. So what I do is I send a lot of mail out, whether it's like, we'll send stickers out to some of our podcast listeners and stuff like that for any reasons. And so it's become a shtick now that we also send like a thanks for listening note or whatever. And then I stamp it. Or if I'm like mailing a shirt out to someone or something, like, if we have a celebrity guest on, and we'll put it in just like a regular yellow padded envelope. And then I'll stamp it on the back, just so they know.
Jim Seal of Approval.
Yeah. That it came through my hands and I said, this is okay to go.
I think that one of the saddest things about rubber stamps is that in my mind, I'm always picturing a large, vehement swing and a significant impact, which doesn't really work with the mechanics of these devices.
No. No, it does
but
not.
I bet it does for David.
He doesn't even have to do it. He just got to tap,
Right.
tap, tap.
But he can. Like if
He can.
if he's
Oh,
very
yeah.
if he's very excited about a thing, like if he's like, I approve, bang.
And he's never got to worry about smudging either.
Yeah.
No smudging.
I mean, it's.
There you go, David.
I mean, I think that you nailed the assignment and what we look for in this. Like it's dumb. But
Safe to say, no one else has that power. You've given up.
No, that's not a thing.
No, I'm just
very
making sure.
specific.
Yeah,
that's all. That's what we look for. Let's. Okay, you know what? We're going for it. I'm having a good time. If not as late as I thought. Neato Bazzeato says he's been thinking about this question for about a year or so, and he asked, "Do you feel that the
I love
removal
that shtick is still going?"
Yeah. I know. I don't even remember where it started, and I know that we haven't explained. Did I ever tell you who it was?
I don't think so.
I'm not going to say it on the air because I can't. It'll ruin it. Do you feel that the removal of comic sales from drugstores and convenience stores has negatively impacted the industry, or maybe even totally killed physical comic sales? In the early 80s, when I was 6 or 8 years old, there were spinner racks on the drugstores or 7-Eleven where I would drool over them and beg my parents to buy them. And when I was 10, I had a paper route, and that was all I spent my money on. You must be the same age as me, because when I was 11, that's exactly what I did. Pretty sure that the early exposure is why I am a lifelong reader. If I had to rely on comic shops, I probably wouldn't have seen or even known about the actual comics until much later. The first comic shop I saw was in a mall in the 90s. Anyway, he says, I have the best patron power ever, so I had to look it up. And in episode 795, Conor bestowed upon him the power of tiny thunderstorms in his hand.
Oh.
And I was like, that's pretty good. Do you have? You're younger than I am. Do you have any memory of spinner racks in stores?
I do. The first comics I bought were off a spinner rack from a local pharmacy.
Mm-hmm. Me too.
And it, man, I saw this and I have so many thoughts. So buckle up.
Mm-hmm. There are some logical fallacies here.
That it was just a totally different time. First of all,
yes,
and the thought that if comics were made more available elsewhere, that people would pick them up or whatever, I don't think exists anymore. In the same sense.
It's been demonstrably proven not to be the case.
Right. In the same sense that, like, when was the last time you picked up a magazine at the grocery store that was on the rack at the checkout counter? No, you look at those and you wonder, who picks these up? Right?
I didn't, but you makes total. It's interesting because, like, I remember I bought mountain bike magazines for a little while, and then I stopped because I was like, these aren't very good. And then for a little while I had a subscription. I actually really like Esquire magazine. I really like Outside magazine. At one point I had a subscription, because you get free subscriptions sometimes, or you used to, I don't know. And it was Outside, and they just never stopped sending it. And I didn't have time to read. I didn't read them, and they piled up. And I wrote, I was like, you can stop sending these. And they're like, no, it's fine. Right. I couldn't get them to stop. Eventually they did, but I didn't read them.
You don't even read magazines at the doctor's office anymore, right? No, like that was the thing,
stupid
right?
Phones.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think that the one of the things plaguing, I guess, if that's not over dramatic enough, the physical comics and where you get them and all that is, quite frankly, the publishers do a pretty shitty job of marketing their books in all instances. And so I think
I just assumed people didn't want them, and so they gave up.
Well, but I think I look at I picked up comics, or I had a few when I was a kid that I got off the spinner rack, that none of them made me diehard comic fans. I didn't become a diehard comic fan until they killed Captain America. And that was fairly recent, all things considered. Yeah. Right. Yes. But here's what those comics did do though. Cartoons hit kind of at the same time. It was the 90s for me. And so, we were in glory days of those kinds of cartoons, right? For kids.
SpiderMan.
Yeah. Like if you go back and rewatch that stuff, they do not hold up. They're all terrible. But
right. Same with my favorites, but yeah.
Right. But I was obsessed with that stuff. And I was way more a X-Men fan and Batman fan and Spider-Man fan because of that than any book I may or may not have picked up from a spinner rack. And it was my when I got older and had a bit more disposable income and saw Captain America dead on the front page of the Daily News. I was like, whoa, they did what? And that's how I got in. I started reading forwards. I started reading backwards. And that's what got me in. To me, at the end of the day, a good story featuring characters you are aware of or know and love are a way more effective tool at getting people to seek out physical books than just making them more available.
So, several thoughts. I believe now that the comic book is a niche object. The printed comic book is a niche object.
Like vinyl.
The people who want them are buying them and no one else wants them, and you couldn't make them want them if you tried to. But they have tried to. This is the thing about, like, if all the people go to see superhero movies, like, they don't want comic books. They want superhero movies. They're different things. Now, there are very valid business reasons for why this thing happened. First of all, if everybody made a lot of money from selling comic books at drugstores and convenience stores, they would still sell them there. They don't. Yep. One thing that's different is that they were not just the direct market and the newsstand market were different things. The direct market was what it is now. It's you order non-returnable items. They're delivered to comic shops. That's one thing. The newsstand market, the periodical market, is returnable. Most of the magazines, I don't know if it's possible this changed, but I believe it still works that way. Store orders magazines. What they do not sell, they send back for a refund.
Yep.
This was a problem for the comic book industry. And it turned out that they were making, the sales were dropping on those things, and they were making more money in the direct market, and the newsstand market was too risky. They would, they'd sell stuff and then they would get a bunch of it taken away again. This happened to, I don't know if I'm talking out of school. It was long enough ago. I don't care. This happened in DC Comics. At one point, Barnes and Noble had amassed like a lot of books that they didn't sell and returned all of them at once. And it was like enormous financial hit to the publisher. Which is, it's one of those things, like, it's really easy as an outsider to say, I would say that probably had a hand in Vertigo not being a thing.
Sure.
I guess. It's really easy as an outsider to say, well, why don't they just put them in all these places? Well, there's all sorts of business reasons and rules that it doesn't work. If it made tons of money, they would do it. And it's a nice idea, but in practice, it didn't catch on. I think there's lots of reasons, but I couldn't tell you. I've been doing this a long time. I couldn't give you a reason why people gravitate towards comic books. Like, there's lots of reasons, but it's not because it used to be because you liked superheroes. Because when I was a kid, I did like superheroes, and they were toys, and I always had, and you wanted more of them. And for me, the cartoons either non-existent or too far and few between, or not good or whatever. And so that's when I was like, oh, there's these comic books. Luckily, over time, for me, I got into the craft of it, which is the thing that I most appreciate. I mean, I still have affection for characters and stuff like that. But if it was, if it wasn't for the craft, I don't think I would still be in this show. Right. I guess has something to do with it. But that there's, they could put all this stuff back in stores and it wouldn't make a bit of difference. And also, I am talking here about mainstream comic books, certainly issues. I'm not talking about the, gangbusters publishers, mainstream publishers of graphic novels and YA stuff and things. It's a different thing.
Sure.
But yeah, comics, and you're talking about Marvel and DC can't do a thing out of it. If you're Dark Horse, forget it. You're not getting in there. The the direct market is that's your lifeline. That's all there is. And it was designed that way. So, which is why, the same reason why retailers want to make you pre-order, because if they buy it, they're stuck with it. Razor thin margins. They're guessing with their own money. They're making a bet every week. And so that's how it is. Next one, we're gonna do one more. Super short, I think. Yep. It depends on how long we go. But fun. Scott from Oregon We all know that Matteo Scalera needs to stop it. I got to wondering, though, are there any living comics artists who you thought at the time should stop it? And they did actually stop it. And now you're kind of bummed that they stopped it. And you haven't seen much of their work anymore. I don't know if you're aware of this. We were talking about Black Science for a long time. Every time we got to Matteo Scalera, I'm explaining the joke. The joke would be, like, this guy needs to stop. There are other artists out here, and he's making them feel bad about themselves, and he needs to knock it off. Because this is far too.
Then I've got one at top. I got one top of the list. Easy.
Go ahead.
Jerome Pena.
Oh, yeah, a Rick Remender adjacent artist.
Yeah. Yep.
Oh man.
Yep.
You're right.
Yep.
Oh man, he needed to stop it, and I mean, he hasn't dropped off. Like, he's not gone. He's around.
No. Right.
Scotty Young.
Mm.
I get why Scotty has configured his career like he did.
Yes.
And he's made a lot of wonderful comics that there's a good chance that many people do not really even know he did art in sequential comics.
Mm-hmm.
But I was reading one of his books recently that he writes great comics now. He's got really good. And I just thought, man, I can't remember when he's done sequential art in such a long time. And I was bummed out.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that's terrible. We were just talking about Steve McNiven earlier.
Mm-hmm.
There's a ton of guys like that, Travis Charest.
Yeah. Mark Silvestri is one of those for me too.
Yeah. Did you read the Batman?
I did. Yes. I mean, it was great. But knowing that it took a decade to do, I was like, oh God, we'll never see him again.
Another one that we actually came up, I don't remember if it was on the show or offline, but we were talking about Daniel Acuna.
Oh man, I love Daniel Acuna.
Yeah, and he kind of
dude's so good. Well, I mean, he did a bunch of that most recent Black Panther run.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
he disappeared to me. I guess that's not good. But he did, he did some of it, but it wasn't like he was on a book every month for a really long time.
Yep.
And a lot of times when somebody disappears, it's either because they couldn't get work, which shouldn't be the case with people who just needed to stop because it's too good,
or they got pulled into movie or video game land.
Video games. They went, wait a minute, I can do covers and I make the same money or more, and I don't destroy my back, and I have a life. All sorts of reasons, but
one of the 90s guys that I love, and like he just started posting again on Instagram, is Stephen Platt.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
I loved Stephen Platt.
I mean, I would have said Steve Lieber, but he actually had a comeback. But for a while, I was like, this guy's one of the best guys. And then,
but you know what I hate though? This is going to sound terrible.
Can't wait.
Anytime an artist goes to do a book with Mark Millar, I feel like we never see them again. Stuart Immonen,
Goran
Parlov.
That's him. Yeah.
Yep.
Didn't Stuart Immonen officially retire?
Well, he did, but don't get me wrong. I understand the Mark Millar deal is a very, very good one, and so I do not begrudge any artist doing that.
No,
but it feels
it's a real sign of honor too.
It is.
Because he works with great, say what you will about the guy, about whatever. He has a great eye for art. He works with great artists only.
Yep.
Oh man, Goran Parlov, I miss him so much. He was fantastic. Yep. Stuart Immonen is also a fantastic example. That guy, I mean, there is no better comic book storyteller.
Yeah, Stuart Immonen is to me a modern Rushmore comic artist.
Yeah. Gabriel Hardman is probably what I would say.
God, I'm just looking at a piece I've got hanging up on the wall from that guy. I love that guy so much.
As she said, I am looking at my Stuart Immonen pages in front of me, and then I sort of went to the right, and there's a Kirby cover in between him. That's the Kirby's not original, but the Immonen and the Hardman is. And Gabriel Hardman is a very successful storyboard artist. He just did the Indiana Jones movie. But he's a wonderful comic book storyteller, completely singular in style, and just wonderful. But he's not doing sequentials. All sorts of reasons. One of them is that being a full-time comic book artist can be a bit of a drag.
Yeah.
Once you achieve it, and then you're locked into the process. It's a haul. Yeah, I'm looking around. I kind of think I think it's actually, this came up on the Patron, is that somebody said the same thing about Miller, and then somebody also mentioned Chris Samney. And it's not that he's not doing comics, but he sort of got out of that mainstream part of it. So
he's doing a lot of creator-owned stuff, and and he did Firepower,
but it's not in like the weekly churn of mainstream comics, which fortunately or unfortunately, that's what we end up focusing on here and spending all that time. So I tend to not. That's outside of my sort of weekly viewpoint. And there's no other time. So I'm looking around. I have 2 pieces of Gabriel Hardman sequential or art on my walls.
I have a Diodato piece hanging.
Really?
A Viscardi piece hanging. Yeah, but I got
a page, or is it?
It's a page. Yeah, before he went fully digital.
From what?
From Dark Avengers. It's a shot.
Wow.
It's a shot of the Sentry flying out of Avengers Tower.
Wow.
It's a great piece. And then I've got a page by Dave Marquez, who I know is still he did a bunch of stuff at DC and is doing stuff kind of on his own, but I'm like, oh man, I love Dave Marquez.
Yeah. He's a guy who he was good or whatever, but he got so much better.
Yes.
That's sort of by, the last stuff I saw was, it was just, leaps and bounds from where he started. Really impressive.
Yep.
I think this could go on and on because of the sort of churn of making professional comic books in this way. But, Walt Simon should still be doing books at Marvel. Him and John Romita Jr. should be able to do everything they want for as long as they want, and everyone should buy it. And it's stupid if they don't.
Yeah.
Hey, I got one. John Byrne.
Oh,
I mean, I don't really know what happened to him. I know that he sort of fell out of favor, but if we're just talking about art, I bet he can still draw. I bet he can still draw the shit out of comics if he wanted to, and I think it would be awesome. And I know there was stuff that came out, and it was like, this isn't what it used to be. I don't care. He's awesome. Those were good letters, and we went over because of it. So I'm going to go through the rest. Thanks for writing in.
One more.
Yes, please.
I'd love to see Kevin Eastman return to interiors at some point.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Big Kevin Eastman fan.
I mean, Mignola.
Yeah.
I actually, I loved Peter Laird when I was a kid. He was my favorite because it was more cartoony.
Yeah.
And the other sketchy stuff, but yeah, good answers. Contact at ifanboy.com. You can send us letters. A couple of good ones here, so that was excellent. More of that. If you want to send one to our Media Explode show, which is non-comic stuff, you can do that. Just mark that in the subject line. This month, by the way, our Media Explode will be the summer mailbag. So we will be coming out with that using your very letters so that we don't have to think of things to talk about. Let's see. If you're listening to this, there will have been a hangout this past weekend. If you are a patron, you can still access that. That'll be there. Previously, 2 weeks ago, I released a Talksplode with Howard Chaykin. Easily my most remarked upon show I've ever, or interview show that I have ever done. Mixed feelings sort of about some of the things he said, but kind of a firebrand. He's kind of been around long enough to sort of have every opinion and kind of have earned it. Scared the hell out of me. Not him, but just I think I know comics, but if I'm talking about a guy who's a 50+ year veteran, who knew everybody from the golden age on through to today, I don't want to look dumb. And so I was so happy. What an honor. This by the way, just for the record, Jim, I don't know if you ever go back to doing creator interviews again like you used to in the long form, but you were great at it. I really
appreciate
liked
that.
it. Second best guy doing it. There was a book explode this past week that came out. Conor and I talked about It's Lonely at the Center of the Earth by Zoe Thorogood, an irritatingly young creator with a heck of a lot of talent. Book's kind of a bummer and kind of delightful all at the same time, which is good art. There will be a Media Explode After that, like we said, that's the mailbag. And at some point in the future, there are a bunch of movies coming out. I don't remember what they are, but there will be shows for some of them and not others. Wouldn't hold my breath for Blue Beetle, from what I can tell. Justice League War World, though, will feature the animation Brain Trust. They will talk about that at some point. I won't, because I don't do that. Go to iFanboy.com. You can find 1,300 shows and more and counting. You can get podcasts wherever you can get podcasts. You know that because you're listening to this. I don't know why we say this. We are at iFanboy on Instagram. You can find out what the pick of the week is before the show comes out. And sometimes there's the best of the week in panels there. Connor's out this week, pillaging and whatnot, and I have to remember to do that. You can follow Conor and I at CSGO Patrick and J.A. Flanagan on Instagram. Jim, where are you?
Jim Viscardi everywhere, including Threads, which, I figured I'd, land grab there. I'm not doing any of the other bullcrap. No Blue Sky, none of that other stuff.
Do you want to do this next bit?
Sure. Subscribe to the YouTube, youtube.com/iFanboy, where you'll find all of their old video shows. And they post this show every week. Please consider writing a review or leaving a star rating on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, and tell them Jim sent you.
Would you like to? The show will last forever. I have a story. About YouTube, a short fatherhood story. The other night, my son, my 9-year-old son, was reading a book, and longer story. Lindsay comes home from the library, and they have gone there and they picked up some books. And Lindsay says to me, Lindsay's my wife. You know that. Hey, do you know the person who made this book? And it's kind of a running joke around here, because sometimes I do, and sometimes but whatever. Like, my kids could not give less of a shit. Like, I know, like, they probably think that other dads are like, I know the guy who did that book, and they just don't care. But this one was Rainbow Roll book. And I said, okay. I was like, I actually do know her, and she's fantastic. These books are going to be great. I looked at the calendar. This is I overshare. I looked at the calendar, and it was 1 year to the day that I had been laid off the year before. The day I was laid off, I was scheduled to do a Talksplode that night with Rainbow Roll.
Oh, nice.
But here's the thing, and I don't think I've said this. Here is the thing that makes me speak of her with enormous affection. I was in a shit mood, obviously. But I went through with it. I scheduled, I got her there, and I figured it would make me feel better. And it did. End of it, I said, we're off the air. And I said, I really appreciate this. I had a really rough day. Left it at that, and said, this really like helped me get my head out of it, and I always enjoy talking to people, and thank you so much for your time, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, well, what happened? And I was like, I lost my job today. And then she talked to me for a while, and she checked up on me for months afterwards, like went through the thing or whatever. And so I just I sent her a note, and I was like, you got this. It's a year to the day, and this happened, and my son brought home your book, and that's nuts.
That's cool.
What I started with, though, was that Henry is reading her book, and I go, oh, it's manga. It looks like manga. And he goes, manga. And I was like, Henry, I don't pull this a lot, but do you know who I am? And he didn't fucking believe me. So I opened up YouTube and I Googled iFanboy manga and we started talking. And I was like, see? And then he made me look it up on Google to see that I was pronounced. And I was like, of course I'm right. I was like, I'm kind of an expert. Like, not even just in my own mind. And I had to convince him. Anyway.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
What's going on over there at comicbook.com?
Well, I can tell you it's going to be one interesting Comic-Con this year, folks.
Oh, shit.
It's probably going to be the most, it's going to be the best it's going to be the best comic book San Diego Comic-Con there's been in a very long time.
That's fascinating. I think I just put together why you had mentioned the SAG strike in the way that you did.
Right.
Holy shit. Normally, they're not allowed to promote anything.
Normally by now I will have set up a schedule and have ordered furniture and a set and go all out and, basically be interviewing celebrities and creators and all that stuff for 3 days straight, basically.
So you've got no writers and no actors.
Yep.
Huh. Well, hey, it's the year that comics get to shine.
That's right. going to be nothing but Todd McFarlane for 3 hours.
I'm down with that.
Only ask him. I'm only going to ask him 4 questions, and it's going to be 3 hours.
Listen, I only want to hear the answer to one question.
Okay.
Why do you sound like you're from Brooklyn, but you're from Canada? Why? It doesn't make sense. It has to happen.
It's got to be because he's a big baseball fan.
Yeah, sure. And also, like a comic guy. Like, when he broke in,
right?
That's what everybody in comics sounded like. So he had to be like, yeah, I'm talking to you guys over here. You know? This was super fun. Thank you.
Of course.
I lost my job. No. Okay, so that'll wrap it up. We did enough show. We definitely did enough show. I'm Josh.
I'm Jim.
Awesome. Thank you for coming. Thank you for bailing me out this week. It was delightful. See you next week.